I don't know what Nick's talking about. I love this 110-degree weather. Who's with me? Come on. Thank you. Yes, it's awesome. And if you're not content with it, which is what we're going to talk about today, hopefully by the end of this message, you will be content with 110-degree weather. No, I'm kidding. But in reality, if that song that you sung earlier, It Is Well With My Soul, it's my prayer that if you are not able to sing that with a full heart this morning, that by the end of this sermon, at least hopefully I'll bring you a few nuggets or maybe some words that might encourage you and help you to the end of being able to say, it is well with my soul. Today, we're going to talk about contentment, obviously, and probably more so than contentment, we're going to talk about what it is to be like discontent. Because what you'll find out is God has been working on my heart over the last, say, month or so, and it's just been something that I wanted to share. As a matter of fact, this might be a different kind of sermon. You may not have ever heard a sermon like this before, but like I said, it's my hope that I give you something that you can take home with, whether you're dealing with discontent now, or maybe it's something that you're going to be dealing with in the future, and hopefully I can help you with some tools. So as we settle in, I'm going to pray again just to get my heart right and get our heart right as we go forward. God, we thank you so much for this morning. I thank you for this message that you've uncovered to me that I should have been focused on for longer. And I pray that the things that you taught me will help other people as well. And I pray that your voice speaks through me and that I can speak clearly your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so maybe you're like me. Hopefully you're not. Once in a while, I just begin to get restless. I just can't settle down. My mind just wanders. It keeps going. As a matter of fact, who's with me on the whole? Sometimes at night, I just do math problems, and that's why I can't go to sleep. Anybody? Like literally, pi is 3.141597. I forget the rest, and that's why I keep kind of thinking, what's the rest? I forget what the rest is. Anyways, so it's like my mind just keeps wandering. It keeps going, and it's like this place of, it seems like more discontent than anything, because I look back in my life and I can see this in other areas. Like when I was in high school, I always wanted to be in college because, I had some college friends that went off to college and they were having the time of their lives, and that's kind of where I wanted to be. And then when I got into college, I was like, well, now I want a job because I want to make some money, I want to have a cool car, and I want to get married, and, because you have to make money to have a cool car to get married, right? So that discontent followed me, which is probably why I dropped out of college and went to the police academy. Now, my wife wanted me to remind you or let you guys know that I did eventually finish college, but at the time I went to the police academy. And it's funny because even in the police academy, my teammates, they all voted me most eager to get a job, because between the time that I applied for the police academy and I got hired by Manteca, I probably applied for 30 different departments. So yes, that's me, Mr. A little bit discontent, can't find it. But that's the way it is. Every once in a while, this happens in me where I just can't settle down and I just can't focus on what's in front of me. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I was supposed to preach last week. Thank you to Jim B if he's in the room, because he stepped up to the bat and took care of that. But I just couldn't get it going. I had this topic, the book, The Art of Neighboring. I wanted to do something with that because we're having the National Night Out in like week and a half, and we're doing our picnic. And I really thought that would have been a great sermon topic to just go with, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't make it fit. It was like I was trying to slam this square peg into this circular hole the whole time, and it just didn't work. But eventually, like I said, Pastor Jim bailed me out. Now, it was funny because it wasn't until like our Monday morning meetings after Nick got back, our student ministries director, we were sitting talking, and it was great. It was so good to have him there. I wanted to sit with him. I wanted to hear how youth camp went. I mean, you guys heard it. It was amazing. He had so many different cool things to share. And then at the end, he looked at me and he goes, well, how are you doing? I'm like, ooh, well, let me be honest. And, I said all this discontent and all the things that were stirring up in my life. And he goes, well, have you prayed about it? And I'm like, yeah, I prayed about it. He's like, okay, well, guess what? Sounds like you're going to be doing a sermon on contentment. What? That's not cool, man. That's just really like a Jesus juke here. You can't do that to me. You're supposed to. No, but seriously, it was really great for me to hear. It was something that I needed. That simple word gave me focus. It made me feel so much better because I realized something. I realized that I wasn't content, and I realized it was because my priorities were a little bit out of whack. And it was like exactly what my heart needed to hear at that moment. So, how do we find contentment? Well, you saw the bumper. A lot of ideas on what contentment is and where it comes from. And really, none of them were like really good. There was one in there, I'm pretty sure you guys heard it. But today, it's my hope that we can get to the bottom of this. And the thing is when I hear stuff like that and hear about anxiety, like the students were telling you about all the anxiety in their lives, and that was great that they had a message on it. But the thing is my mind goes right to social media, and I'm like, it's no wonder why everybody is so amped up. There's no contentment in our souls. We're all anxious. I mean, no matter what you do, you're like flipping through the screens, you see these pictures of the coolest toys that money can buy, or these perfect people with perfect skin, and that's not Photoshop, by the way. Or you see these lots of land with beautiful homes with that perfect, the farm sink in the kitchen. I'm just like, oh, and what about the vacations? It's like, oh, look at all these vacations that everybody's going on. It's like, look at that beautiful place, and I'm here in Manteca. Or even like people that that are advancing rapidly in their job, and they're having success, and it's all cool. And you're like, man. But here's the thing. The only catch is, you just got to work a little harder, right? You got to do a little bit more, and you make a little bit more money. Or okay, wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later. But you get what I'm saying? That whole snowball thing, out of control. So what's the answer? No more social media? Guess what? It was around a lot longer than just social media. TV ads, remember them? Commercials? How many millions of dollars did it take to get a commercial at the Super Bowl? Millions and millions of dollars. And the whole reason was to get you to believe that your life would be better if I just had that Ford or the all-inclusive trip to Cancun. Okay, so we cut out TV. What happens? Well, it was before TV too. Remember radios? Commercials on radios? I don't know why, but my mind always goes to the best Christmas movie ever. Christmas Story. Huh? Who's with me? Who remembers Ralphie? Ralphie got that decoder ring, right? He saved up for so long, he got it in the mail, and he sits in front of the radio, listens to the Orphan Annie show, and she gives him this message that only certain people could get, right? And he takes his code, and he takes the decoder ring, and he runs up to the bathroom, the only place in the house where he can find peace. Maybe that's why you're thinking, oh, I'm married, that's why he does it. Anyways, sorry. He goes up to the bathroom. Who remembers what the message was? Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine. A gosh darn commercial, he says. Not in that phrase, but marketing's goal is to get us to believe that our lives are not complete without their products. And this is the way the world thinks. Everybody outside these walls wants you to believe that. And it's a battle. They want you to believe that there's the fight for more is what's going to make you content. The excess, the perfection, it's the things. So can we just admit that discontent has been around for a while, or at least the way Satan uses it to separate us has been around for a while? As a matter of fact, who remembers the 10th commandment? Anyone? 10th commandment? Thou shalt not covet. It was around during Moses' time, right? So it's been around a long time. Are we on the same page here? Okay, so what are we going to do about it? I'm hoping that today the words of the Apostle Paul will help us kind of have some contentment in our lives because there's a secret here, okay? And we'll get to that in 1 minute. In the last chapter of this short letter to the Philippians, he writes, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Now, did you hear that? There's a secret to being content. The cool thing is, we can learn that secret. And I'm going to put that in a different way because I don't think it's just something that we can learn. I think it's something we must learn. Contentment is a secret we must learn. It's okay. But how did Paul learn it? Well, let's look at who he was. In chapter 3, he tells us a little bit about himself. He was circumcised on the 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, in regard to the law, a Pharisee, as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for righteousness based on the law, faultless. Now, what does this mean? This means that he was a man of great standing. He was a Pharisee. He was somebody that probably didn't want for anything. And he likely came from a well-to-do family. So that's that idea that he was well-fed. The idea of the plenty that he speaks of. He came from a well-to-do home. But here's the cool thing. He gave that all up when he confronted Jesus, or Jesus confronted him on the road to Damascus. And now as a follower of Christ, he has been persecuted. And like most everything that he has or had has been stripped away. He had been jailed for his outspokenness for the gospel. And as a matter of fact, while he writes this letter, he is likely on house arrest. Now, this is probably not the worst conditions that he's seen in jail, but it is still not like the greatest. As a matter of fact, he still doesn't have any freedoms, right? And he has to actually provide for himself meals, whether that means if he has finances or funds or people bringing them to him. So he is in need. So when he says that he knows what it is to be in need, he meant it. He knew what it was to experience discontent. So what's that secret we must learn? Now, I thought about it for a while, and I was going to leave this till the end. I'm going to share it now because I want you guys to mull over this and maybe keep this in your mind as we go through the rest of the outline. Philippians 4:13 tells us, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Now, how many out here, you've learned that verse or even memorized it a little differently? Maybe you learned it, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. When I hear that, actually, this is what I think of. I think of Tim Tebow, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things, when that's not really what Paul's saying. Paul's not saying, well, if you just pray a little bit and God's going to give me the strength to throw that 99-yard bomb to the wide receiver to win the game in the fourth quarter when you're down by one. You know, that's not what this is saying. What it's saying is God will give us strength to endure the things that we're enduring, and then through that, we will be able to find contentment. That's the secret. Jesus, he's the secret. All right. Now, there's one more piece that I want you guys to understand. Now that you know it, it's not just like, that's good enough, right? It's like, well, okay, I know it. I'm done. Christ will give me strength. I'll see you later. No. As a matter of fact, Paul tells us earlier in the chapter, or in chapter 2, and he uses a peculiar verse that is going to encourage them, but it's going to kind of challenge them as well. He uses the word to work out. He says, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Now, you get that, to work out. So this secret that we know or we must learn is not something that's going to be easy. It's something that we're going to have to work out. Now, get this, that phrase was actually used as an idiom for people who worked in a mine. Okay, so mines back then weren't like you had a big old machine that went through and you actually had to use a hammer and a chisel to knock the rocks off the wall. And with every falling rock, you would look with anticipation or excitement. Is this the one that gives me that vein of gold? Is this that one that gives me that vein of silver? And this is what Paul is saying, that we need to work our salvation with that excitement. With everything that we experience, we are working out our salvation in hopes that it's going to help build us in some way and walk us towards the end goal of being content. Like I said, Paul's not saying here that this is the way to earn your salvation. What he's saying is that because of your salvation, these are the attitudes that we should be striving to understand, to unlock, to uncover, to be a part of. Now, as we dig in this mine, there are a couple things that we must point out, some things that we must uncover to unlock the secret to contentment. And the first one we need to uncover is the discontent. We need to look at what it means to discontent and where that comes from. And you know the old saying, knowing is half the battle. That wasn't the Apostle Paul, that was G.I. Joe. All right, some of you guys got that. Some of you guys are like, who? Anyways, all right. The easiest one for me to point out, and like I said, some of these I'm going to only go through a couple, but hopefully they'll give you the idea of how to find contentment in the end. So the easiest thing to point out in our discontent is that material and financial discontent. I hit on this in the beginning, right? The idea is that everything will be better if I just have that next cool thing, or if I have a little bit more money, or if I have fill in the blank. And as I alluded to, it snowballs to the point that that gets out of control. All right, now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. My generation of cops, we have the best retirement system here in California. We get 3% of our single highest year for every year's worth of service. So 20 years, 60%, 60% of my single highest year. And so the nature of the beast, being a police officer, different hire dates, stuff like that, every year we had people that were retiring. And it was funny because every year you'd always hear the guy say, yeah, you know what, if I just wait one more year, I'll get 3% more. Okay, just one more. And then that year would come up and that same person would be like, well, if I just wait one more year, I'll get 3% more. And I'm thinking 3%. I mean, come on. Like the cost of living raises 2%, so you're really only up 1%. I mean, what are you doing? And then I realized it. And as I looked at the way they structured their lives, these were the guys that were working the overtime constantly, right? Because they wanted all the new things. They'd buy the new car or the new motorcycle, the new boat, the new bigger and better house. And really, that's not the problem. You know, having some nice things is not the problem. The problem is that next year they traded the old new motorcycle for a new motorcycle, or the old new car for a new car, and bigger, better houses, and so on. Snowballs. You hear what I'm saying? The writer of Ecclesiastes warns us about this. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. And the cool thing is that this thought came from a guy with a lot of money. He was the wealthiest man and the wisest man on the earth at this time. You see, when our focus is on just a little bit more, it'll never be enough. When our focus is on that next thing, there's always going to be a next bigger and better thing. And this is just simply a recipe for discontent. Now, another type of discontent is relational discontent. Now, this one's easy, right? So it's like if you're single, you want to be married. If you're married, you want to be single. You know, it's just... My wife told me not to tell that joke. Last service laughed, but anyways, no, I'm kidding. It's not it. Although there's a bit of truth to that, because the ugly word that I'm going to use to describe the relational discontent is jealousy, right? That's the key here. Relational discontent comes from jealousy. And in Proverbs, we see a peaceful heart leads to a healthy body, but jealousy is like cancer in the bones. You see, relational discontent, jealousy, it's rooted in that idea of comparison that, they've got more. I like what they have, or I like what they're doing, or I like what they look like. It's always in comparison, and that cancer spreads. Now, here's the thing. As I heard this best explained in a story, and I'm going to share it with you. And there's two ladies. You know, they were friends. They grew up together. They had gone to Bible study together. They had coffee together. They hung out together. They did yoga together. So they were friends, right? You get this. Then once they got married, they both kind of went their own directions. Like the one we're going to call her the mom, she stayed at home. She had a few kids, and they just had a great relationship, and it was the beautiful thing, as parents know how that can be. And then the other lady, she was going to be the one who went to work, and she had a job, and their relationship was great because they did all the things that you could do when you have money, and vacations and the nice house. And at work, she had all this respect, and she was building teams. And before you know it, the two of them could not stand being in the same room together. You know how that is? Well, when they finally, years later, decided to get together to work things out, they realized a couple things. You see, the mom was just jealous of how the life of the working woman looked. Like I said, all the vacations, the pretty house, the how the work was going, the promotions, and all the things that are in that. She was jealous. And then the working mom said the same thing about the working woman said the same thing about the mom. That when she saw the life and how beautiful it was with the children and all the things they were doing, going to the park and having fun, and she was just jealous of what she had. Things that they weren't able to have. Now, I showed this as a generic story, but I'm sure that you've heard pieces that ring true in stories that you know of, right? I know I've heard several, the last 5 years I can count at least several of stories like this that happened in real life. And it's sad because here's the thing. Do you think that the women intended to hate each other? No, they let that little jealousy build a narrative, and it got out of control. It may have started with, wow, that's cool, to, oh, she thinks she's better than us. Oh, really? Now they're looking down on us. Look, now they're doing it just to flaunt it. Now, see, they just hate us. And that cancer builds and builds and builds until we hate each other. You see how that goes? I know you guys have heard stories like this. Jealousy can really eat us up from the inside out if we're not aware. And finally, Our discontent can also be circumstantial. Have you lost a job? Are you fighting a disease? I mean, let's be plain and simple. Like, there's things that we can't do because we're older. I mean, I can't play soccer anymore because I can't run from here to the end of the block. But I mean, that's probably more because I'm lazy, not because I'm old. But I like to say that I have an excuse that I'm old. But you guys kind of get the idea, right? There's a bunch of different circumstances that could really just knock us on our butt. As a matter of fact, I had a friend at the police department. We worked with him for over 10 years, and he was a fun guy to be around. He was one of those guys that was, always happy, never didn't say a whole lot, but, he was always sick, so we always made fun of him, and he laughed, and we laughed, and it was just fun. But he was a really great guy. He was a good sport about it. But the problem was, he kept getting sick, and to the point where he couldn't stop getting sick. So he finally went to the doctors, and after months and months of tests and appointments, he found that he had leukemia. And I don't remember all the details of it, but I do remember visiting him in the hospital. We tried to joke with him. It was a bunch of us. We were trying to lift his spirits up. As a matter of fact, we see this principle in Proverbs. A happy heart makes a face cheerful, but a heartache crushes the spirit. You guys understand this. You guys recognize this. You understand that it's our job when our friends are down to try to build them up, right? It's a good thing to do. But amidst our joking and laughing, the mood got very serious. He started crying, and he asked, "Why is this happening to me? Why couldn't it happen to those gangbangers that we arrest for killing each other, or the drug dealers that are killing our children? Why me?" I wish I really had something better to say. I actually wish I had gone through this study back then, so I had something for him. But the only thing I could say is I believe that God will be glorified through this somehow. You know how hard it was to tell my friend that? Because I didn't have any concrete evidence. I didn't have anything that he could look forward to. He was a believer, thank goodness. That he knew that where he was going to go was going to be with Jesus in glory soon. But what do you say? Do you think my friend was content? His heart was broken, and we tried to lift his spirits. But was his spirit crushed? Yeah, probably. And I could see why he wouldn't be content. And how do you find contentment in that? Well, that's the hope of the next section here. The main point is discontent isn't about the things that we don't have or the things that we do have. It's not about the people we envy or the circumstances that we're in. It's actually just a state of mind. It's not a bad thing to desire these things, right? It's not a bad thing to look at someone and say, "Hey, yeah, I want to be like that." And it's not bad to be upset with our circumstances. It's our mindset. A good question to ask is, are we allowing these things to take us to a dark place? And knowing these things, they might drive us into that dark place, that discontent. Identifying those things, that will help put them in the proper place in our lives. It will help us to have the proper mindset. Rick Warren says it this way: make sure you own those things. Don't let those things own you. So now that we have uncovered some of the things that cause us to be discontent, the next thing I want to uncover are the blessings. Now check this out. We're going to try to go through this again, and we're going to turn things around a bit. I want to uncover the blessings first in the material and financial. Starting to see a theme? All over this letter to the Philippians, we see the joy that Paul has in dealing with them. Paul isn't just blindly rejoicing, while he's in jail and in chains, just because. He's actually finding joy anywhere he can. And as a matter of fact, in this letter, we see the word rejoice over 10 times. Now, in chapter 4, despite being in jail, he rejoices in the gifts he was receiving. He uncovered the blessings in the material and the financial things. Verse 4:10. But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly now at last your care for me has flourished again. He's saying, hey, thanks for the money. I appreciate that you sent it. But here's the thing. You'll see coming up, he's not happy. It's not just about the money. He's rejoicing because their partnership with him. Verse 14, yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. This was a church that got it. It wasn't just the people that were throwing money at him. It wasn't like just, here's your money, go away. They were sharing in his troubles. Now, Paul is saying, I wasn't even with you. Oh, I skipped a verse. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you say that 5 times fast. You sent me aid more than once when I was in need. And Paul is saying that even when I wasn't with you, you took care of me. You shared in the burdens of ministry. And here's the cool thing. He even says why he was so excited. Verse 17, not that I desire your gifts. It wasn't about the money, right? What I desire is that more be credited to your account. They are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Somebody say amen. Now get this. This isn't one of those sermons where I'm going to tell you, like, if you give to the church, in 5 days' time, you're going to have 10 full back in the mail. That's not the point of this. The point of this is what I'm saying is that when you give, you become a part of God's will to meet people's needs. Now, in my position, I'm totally blown away by the generosity of this church. You heard it earlier. Nick was talking about all the things that you guys do to make camp possible, to make the ministry happen. And I see it all the time. People walk up to, here's $100, Bill, make sure a kid gets to camp. Hey, bounce house is broke. Where do I write the check? How do I get you another one? Our Blessed Family programs we have 3 times a year. It's powered by God through you. We are helping meet needs of our community through the financial and the material. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians, we are the hands and the feet of the church, and every person here has a role to play. And when we play our role, we get to be partners with God, and we get to change the world. Pretty cool. Now, I spoke with someone the other day that grew up going to church, but they never really had the opportunity to understand or learn about what it really meant to worship through giving. And he said there was a season in life that he remembered money being tight. But once he sat down and prioritized God first, he said it was crazy how things fell into place. Now, like I said earlier, this wasn't one of those magic tricks where he started putting God first and money magically appeared, right? He said it was that he had his money on his mind, right? It was a priority, and where it was being used became a priority. And when he prioritized it, God was first. And he saw where every piece of it went. It's not a magic trick. It's prioritizing those financial things, those material things. And when we see those material and financial things as a tool for Christ, we begin to see them as blessings. Next, I want to uncover the blessing of relationships. Starting to see what I'm doing here? We're flipping it on its head. See, Paul experienced jealousy from others. And we see a clear picture of that in Philippians 1, starting in verse 15. He tells us, it is true, some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of that, I rejoice. You see, some commentaries say that these men were mocking Paul because of his changed life. Remember, he was a Pharisee. He gave it all up to do something different. Some other ones say that it was because he was having so much success and they were just straight up jealous of him. But either way, they were spreading lies and they were doing these things because they were jealous. They wanted him to hurt. They wanted to spread lies. They were just envious of him. You see, in verse 18, Paul asks, but what does it matter? I don't know about you guys, but when somebody like rips on me, I really want to rip back. You know what I'm saying? Having been at the police department for a long time, I have some doozies, so I try to keep those in the... Anyways, but when we lead with grace and forgiveness, it opens the door to potentially new relationships as people ask you why you responded or why you didn't respond in a certain expected way. And you get to tell them. And the same thing applies to the person who wronged you. It will open the conversation, hopefully, to why they are jealous, and hopefully we will have the opportunity to tell them, look, my mind has been changed because of the love of Christ, and let me tell you how. And it can change your life as well. When we see every relationship as a way to share Christ, we will see relationships as a blessing. Every relationship. Now the question is, do you think those two ladies that I talked about in the last segment, do you think they would have started to hate each other if they had this perspective? I don't think so. And finally, I want to uncover the blessing in our circumstances. Now, we've talked about Paul's circumstances and how to rejoice in them. Philippians 1, verses 12 through 14. Now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. He says, I'm in jail, but hey, it's cool. Gospel's being spread. As a result, it's been become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. So there's people in the jail and the palace guards, and everybody are knowing what's going on, and he's being a model to those, and there are people who are taking up the gospel to spite the fear of persecution. You see, while he was in jail, he saw the opportunity to share the gospel with anybody, and these are the new people that he probably wouldn't have experienced if he didn't get arrested. Quick note, I'm not saying get arrested. I'm not saying go to jail. They have prison ministries that you can go through to meet with those kind of people. They're great things, just you don't have to get arrested to do it. But what I'm saying is that Paul never missed an opportunity to share the gospel. Now, you guys ever hear the quote that's attributed to Francis of Assisi? I'm sure you have. Preach the gospel and when necessary, use words. It's a good thought. It's actually, he was misquoted. He didn't say that. But here's the thing that I want you to understand. There's a piece that's lacking in there, and we see it in Paul's life because Paul used every opportunity to share the words of the gospel. When it comes to our circumstances, James puts it this way: consider it pure joy. I don't like this one, but it's one that we have to digest. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let that perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature, complete, and not lacking anything. You see, it's our circumstances, those things that we're going through that mature us. You know, both the good circumstances, but also the bad circumstances. How we handle them. Are we grumbling through them? Are we looking for the opportunities to rejoice? Now, I wish I would have been able to share something more like this with my friend before he died, but check this out. Last week, a friend of mine told me a story, and I wish I would have heard this sooner because he was telling me that he's having issues with his heart. It's pretty serious. He has an aneurysm, and he works here regularly. He serves here, and I'm like, I started to think, oh man, that's horrible. He's like, yeah, could you just pray for me? I'm like, absolutely. That's the least I can do. And he's like, it's just almost disheartening. I had bypass surgery 4 or 5 years ago, and I wish they would have just fixed it then. And I was thinking to myself, maybe he's going down that same road of like being discontent. And I'm like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. He goes, but wait, let me tell you. The other side about that bypass surgery, I died 3 times on the table. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, my heart stopped, and they had to get the paddles, and my heart started again. It stopped 3 times, and he said he didn't remember seeing a white light, but what he did remember was, God, get me through this because I want to set up a trust for my wife. And when he woke up alive, he realized that he had more to do and that God gave him more time on this earth so that he could be a servant for God. And so when he told me that last week that he had a heart aneurysm, I'm like, okay, dude, what do we need to do? Do we need to get you a ride home? He's like, no, dude, I am here. I'm here to serve because God gave me another day of life. Oh my goodness. That kind of changed me. That hit me. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that right now because I want a ball. But I was blown away at his heart in those circumstances. Now we see Paul, when he's in jail, it's that maturity in Christ that allows him to have that positive attitude, just like my friend this time. He had gone through life. He had gone through circumstances. Those circumstances made him mature and gave him the right mindset. So until that moment, I was like, I don't know what to do with that. But when he said that, I'm here on this earth for one more moment to serve God, I started thinking about my circumstances. As a police officer, I've seen a bunch of bad things, or some really bad stuff. And there was times when it took me to a dark place. And I'll tell you, it was hard to work out of them, but I worked out of them because I had the hope that Christ provides all things through Christ who gives me strength, right? That perspective helped me to see the hope, to see God when in the dark places. And the cool thing is that now I can use that to help others see that hope when they are in dark places. Remember what I said earlier about hands and feet? We are the hands and feet. There are circumstances that God is bringing you through so that way you can help somebody else with them. So that way you can be a blessing to others. And honestly, this is why we offer life groups. This is why we have men's ministries, women's ministries. That's why we have the children's ministries, kids' ministries. Because each of us is being equipped through our circumstances to be stewards of the gospel. See, we can help others through those circumstances have the right mindset. So what exactly did I do here, right? We said the same three things with a different perspective. I can do all these things through Christ who gives me strength. You see, the secret unlocked, it's the mind of Christ. Now, in his brief letter, Paul emphasizes that believers can experience true joy, true peace, true contentment by living out the mind of Christ within the body. Philippians 2, 1-4. Therefore, if you have in any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing of the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but to each of you to the interests of the others. Where does it all come from? Verse 1, being united with Christ. Christ who gives me strength. Paul's ministry, he talks about the joy. His joy is complete and he rejoices when we are all united with that mind of Christ and we're working to a common goal, that like-mindedness, when we are selfless, when we are humble, when we are looking to others' interests. Contentment doesn't come from what you have, but who you know. And using that mindset to frame out your world is the only way we will find contentment. I'm going to share one last story, and as I do, I'm going to ask the band to come up because we're going to finish with the song. So we had a student when I was working in youth ministry a few years back, and she had gone to college, and she came and shared with me this story, and it's just a beautiful story. So the summer after her freshman year, she went on a missions trip to the Dominican Republic, and she was going to work with orphans. And orphanages down there are a little different. Orphan doesn't mean that they just don't have families. It means that maybe they're less fortunate, and this is a place they can go and get food, and they can learn some stuff and have some fun time. So one of the days she and a friend walked a couple of the orphans home, and she was greeted by a lady who wanted to have her come into the house. Now, I say house, but really the way it was described to me was like a shack. Now, in one corner there was a bed, another corner there was like the old school refrigerator. It was more like an ice box, and then there was a sink on the other, and there were some cabinets. And the lady started getting out like crackers and cheese, because it's what she had. And she got a soda out, and she got some cups because they were going to share the soda too. And it was weird for my friend. She was like, I was just so embarrassed that, this is all she had. I didn't want to take any of it because, I have food back at the orphanage. I don't need this. But as they sat and talked, because the story's not about my friend, okay? The story's about the woman. As they sat and talked, she found out the woman who had so little, she adopted the orphans because she was so moved by the love of Christ that was shared to her by missionaries. And that's actually the reason why she wanted to share this meal with my friend, is because she wanted to be a blessing in any way she could to anybody who would share Christ. You see, the lady didn't have much. She didn't worry about what others thought about her, and she didn't allow her circumstances to keep her down. She had Christ. She had the mind of Christ, and she realized Christ was all she needed. She was content. Sometimes it's not until Christ is all you have that you realize that he's all you need. And that is where you will find contentment.